being a great teammate is so valuable. And, I mentioned the guy I worked for 6 years, Nick Nelson. He used to say to our players, you got to get over yourself. It's not about you. It's about the team. And I think that is incredible advice for basketball. It's incredible advice for life in a lot of ways. Because I just got done saying, I tell our players, life's a competition. But in most aspects of life, whether it's your marriage, your work, you are part of a team.
Yeah,
and
sure.
If you can be a great teammate, I think that can take you very far in life. And it's something that, I spoke briefly about my basketball career as a player. I wasn't all that good. I was
even
fortunate.
At 6'8", huh? Even at 6'8".
I was fortunate to play on an incredible high school team. We were absolutely loaded, and I played on some really solid college teams, but I was never the star. I was never the best player. And for me, it was about how can I make our team better? Whether that's on the court playing, which of course I wanted to do more, whether that was in practice, whether that was being somebody a teammate could talk to.
Time out. Let me ask you this. What if the gap between where you are today and where you want to be isn't talent? It's how you're training when no one's watching. That's what this studio podcast is all about. We don't chase motivation. We don't hype potential. We build identity through habits, standards, and systems. This is where student athletes, parents, coaches, and leaders come to sharpen how they think, prepare, and perform. I'm Coach Randy, and this is the B.U.I.L.T Different Studio Podcast. What's up, family? Coach Randy here. Welcome to the B.U.I.L.T Different Studio Podcast, where we just don't talk about success, we train it. Mindset, systems, habits. This is where champions in sports, school, and life are made. Let's lock in and let's build. Family, today we've got a coach in the studio who understands something a lot of people forget in today's game. Talent might get attention, but standards build winners. Coach Mark Svagera is the head men's basketball coach at Briar Cliff University and someone who spent over 20 years coaching college basketball, building programs, and developing young men through accountability, toughness, and relationships. But here's what stands out most about Coach Svagera. He doesn't just build teams, he builds connection. Right? That's important. And in a time where everybody wants quick results, social media validation, and shortcuts to success, Coach Mark still believes the foundation matters. Standards matter. Relationships matter. Daily habits matter. And isn't it interesting how the strongest cultures are usually built behind closed doors? In the hard conversations, the accountability and the commitment to doing things the right way. He coaches his players hard, but he loves them unconditionally. That combination, that's rare. So today we're talking leadership, we're talking culture, we're talking accountability, and we're talking what it really means to become built different. Family, help me welcome Coach Mark Svagera. Welcome.
Well, thanks, Randy. I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, man, we're excited to have you on board today, Coach Mark. Before we dive in, I want to start with you. Not your resume, not the wins, not the titles. You, for everyone listening, tell us about your journey, your roots, and the moments that shape the way you lead today, because every coach has a foundation, and I want to hear yours.
Yeah, so it's kind of a long story, but I'll try to make it quick.
All good.
I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. I fell in love with basketball at a very young age. A lot of it stemmed from going to local high school games with my grandpa, and shooting in the driveway.
Yeah.
And when I was growing up, unfortunately, we didn't have all the access to gyms, AAU, travel basketball. It was pretty localized. And so we played in the neighborhood, we played at the park, whatever it was, but I fell in love with basketball and, was fortunate enough to play on a couple of really good high school basketball teams. Was even more fortunate to get a basketball scholarship to play at a small school.
So you played at the next level?
I did. I played at Dana College.
That's amazing.
And had an unbelievable experience, honestly.
Okay.
I loved the college basketball experience I had. I built lifelong friendships, both with coaches and teammates.
Yep.
And that's probably the biggest reason I got into college coaching was I loved college basketball. You know, my plan in college was to be a high school teacher and a high school coach. And I had the opportunity to get into college coaching right away at 22 years old.
Okay.
And I loved college basketball. And what I probably didn't realize at the time, but I do now, is my college coach did have a big impact on my life. You know, that's a big reason I got into college coaching. And so, you know, I got lucky a couple times, if I'm being completely honest.
Okay.
I got lucky getting that first job. I was the assistant women's basketball coach at the school I played at. And my second time I got lucky, I got a grad assistant job at a school in our conference, actually.
Okay.
And from there, just kind of, that showed me this is what I wanted to do without a doubt. I wanted to coach college basketball. And so I spent 2 years at Hastings College as a grad assistant. From there, I went to Dickinson, North Dakota, and coached at Dickinson State University for 2 years, and had an opportunity to come to Briar Cliff as the assistant coach. And at the time, the path I had been on, I'd been everywhere a year or two. And I figured I'll be here for a couple of years. I'll move on to what's next. And now 15 years later, here I am. Still at Briar Cliff. I spent 6 years as the assistant coach, just finished my 9th year as the head coach. And so
wow, that's amazing.
That kind of brings us to the here and now. And, you know, like I said, I got lucky a couple times. And maybe more importantly, I've been fortunate that I've worked with outstanding coaches. I was mentored by some phenomenal coaches that helped shape my philosophy, while also, you know, being able to be myself as well. And so that's my path. That's my journey. Like I said, I love college basketball. This is all I've known since I've turned 18 years old, and I don't want it any other way.
And I could hear that. I could hear the love of basketball coming through your story. Coach, you talk a lot about standards, expectations, accountability, and toughness inside your program. What moment in your coaching journey made you realize culture has to be built intentionally every single day and not just talked about when things are going well?
Yeah, it's really hard to pinpoint one moment, but you know, in my 6 years as the assistant coach here at Briar Cliff, I worked for a head coach named Nick Nelson, who was an incredible culture builder. And, you know, I watched that for 6 years. Obviously, I was a part of it too, but I watched, you know, he never negotiated on the standards. You know, what we expected of our players, what we expected of the program, what we expected of ourselves. And I think that's a big part of it, as well as you can't ask your players to stick to a standard that you as a coach are not going to stick to. We have to be the guiding light of that too. You know, so I think watching how he set that standard, but he gave the players a lot of voice, because at the end of the day, I still think it's more impactful if culture is driven by the players themselves. You know, we're modeling it ourselves as coaches. Obviously we have to, but I think when you have, whether it's upperclassmen, captains, doesn't have to be your best players. If you have people every day driving that culture, and when we're talking culture, to me, it's one of those things, I think it's so hard to define what a culture is. You know, for me, we talk about
how to build that.
What are our daily habits? How hard do we work collectively? How willing to sacrifice for the good of the team are we? That's what we talk about with culture. And when you have players driving that, I think it's really, really valuable. If it's only me and my coaching staff talking about that and doing those things, it's still good, but it's not going to be nearly as valuable. And so it's kind of, again, you asked me to pinpoint something, and I don't know if I can, because it's just kind of continually and consistently evolved a little bit. And every group is going to be different.
No, I hear you. I hear you.
With one team, maybe won't work with the next.
Sure.
And that's the fun of coaching too.
Yeah. Now you can hear how much intentionality goes into building a culture like that. And it's a reminder that standards only work when relationships are strong enough to support them, right? And isn't it interesting when the best teams usually aren't the most talented teams, they're the most connected teams? You talked about relationships and building that culture. That brings me to the next piece. You've coached college basketball for over 20 years. And one thing you emphasized is relationships first. In today's world where athletes face pressure, distractions, and constant outside noise, how do you build trust with players in a way that gets them to truly buy into that process?
Well, I think for me, it starts with you have to be who you are. And I'm talking about myself as the head coach. When it's basketball time, when we're on the court, in the weight room, whatever it is, everything we do is pretty laser focused and it's intense. And I get after our guys. I coach our guys hard. But off the court, it doesn't need to be basketball 24/7. I love when guys just stop in the office and we can play pig on the mini hoop, or I have a putting game in the middle of the office. We can just talk about things outside of basketball. And I tell our guys always, I will be honest with you. And sometimes that's tough love, brutal honesty. Sometimes it's telling a kid something they don't want to hear, they don't want to agree with. But I'm going to be honest with them. And I don't want them to just know me as the basketball coach. I want them to know me as the person. I want them to know what I'm about. And I want them to feel comfortable that they can come into my office anytime, call me, text me anytime if something's going on in their life. Unfortunately, college kids go through bad things at times.
Sure, of course.
I want to have that open line of communication. And if a young man comes into our program as a freshman, the way I coach him right away is going to be different than how I coach juniors and seniors, because we have to have time to build that trust. When you get to that point and there's a mutual trust, the respect, all that, now I'm probably going to coach that young man a little bit harder. And I know that I can get on him. He's not going to take it personal. He knows I'm still looking out for him. And I would tell anybody, the best part of my job, the favorite part of my job is the relationships that I get to build with our players. And, there's nothing that gets me more excited than when I get a wedding invitation in the mail from a former player. And
attending their weddings, full circle.
I love when a guy texts me and said, "Hey coach, I just got a new job. I'm getting married. I'm having a kid." Like, that's so awesome to me to have those relationships, because for 4 years, we're together almost every single day. College basketball is a long season. Our guys are here in the summer. We spend a lot of time together. And then all of a sudden, boom, guys graduate. And you might not see them for a couple years, but the fact that I'm fortunate that I stay in touch with a lot of those guys, and I get texts, I get calls. Nothing's going to make my day more than seeing an alum's name pop up on my phone.
Yeah. Now that's powerful, because trust and honesty changes everything. And if you did build relationships before trying to demand results, players respond differently, right? You have to be who you are. You mentioned that. And once trust and honesty is established, accountability stops feeling personal and starts feeling purposeful, right? Which leads me to the next question. You've built programs around, call it collective accountability. What does accountability actually look like inside a winning culture? And how do you teach young athletes to stop avoiding hard conversations and really start embracing responsibility?
Yeah, that is a great question, Randy. And, I have noticed, and I don't want to sound like the old guy. I have noticed the current generation of kids is a little more conflict averse than maybe was the case 10 to 15 years ago.
Sure.
That's just an observation. It's not a knock on anybody or anything. Just an observation. And, accountability can look like conflict. It can feel like conflict. And so first, I'm going to come back to relationships. That has to happen first before you can really hold people accountable. But when we're talking collective accountability, that's something, we have a leadership group within our program every year. It could be 3 players, could be 6 players, kind of depends on each year. But we talk a lot about conflict and accountability. And how, again, when it's player driven, if player A can say to player B in practice, "Hey, you're not pushing yourself hard enough today," or "Hey, you've screwed up this defensive rotation 3 times in a row. You need to get it. Let's go." When that happens and it's taken the right way and it's not a personal attack, that's where it's valuable. And so to me, it comes back to when it's driven as much by the players as it is the coaches. And then when the younger players or new players see that from the older players, they see a senior just got on another senior about whatever it is, they see that's okay.
Okay.
And so then when I get on somebody, which I do and I will, it's the same thing. It's not personal. Yeah, I might light you up in practice for 30 seconds straight.
Sure.
But when we walk out of the locker room and practice is over, I might say, hey, Randy, what do you got going on the rest of the day? How's school going? Like, it's over. Let's move on. And the best teams we've had that kind of collective accountability. There's no doubt about it.
I love that. All right, let's pause right here for a second. I want to ask you something. If nothing changed over the next 6 to 12 months, would your student athlete be more confident, more prepared, closer to their goals, or still hoping things just work out? That's exactly why Athletic Connect is the primary sponsor of this show, because the difference we see, it's not talent, it's structure, it's mindset, it's having a real system. Inside Athletic Connect, we help student athletes build confidence, discipline, and a clear plan from daily habits to performance to creating a digital identity that actually gets noticed by colleges. And this isn't just basketball. This is for student athletes in every sport who are serious about their future in the classroom, on the court, on the field. So here's the move. Go check out athleticconnect.com and see how we're helping athletes become built different in sport, in school, and in life. All right, let's get back to the show. Yeah. Now, I love that because accountability it's one of those things everybody says they want until standards actually challenge them. And the reality is pressure and conflict, like you said, exposes preparation, which makes me curious about the moments that tested you personally as a leader. Over 20 years in college basketball, I know there were seasons where adversity hit, expectations were heavy, and leadership got tested. What's one experience that forced you to grow the most as a coach? And how did that shape the way you lead your program today?
Can I give you two?
Of course. Yeah. More the better.
Okay. So the first one, my first year as the head coach, and my last couple of years as an assistant coach, we had been really good. We'd won.
Okay. You were 6 years at the assistant coach there, right? Prior?
I was. In the last 4 years, we won 100 games, a couple conference championships. And so I took over.
Very successful.
And the pressure I immediately put on myself to keep this rolling was really high. And that first year, we had a great year. We won 26 games, went to the Elite Eight. And going into year 2 as the head coach, we had a really good team coming back. And I'm sitting there in the summer thinking, this is a national championship caliber team in NAI basketball. And our guard court was incredible. And we start the year, we're 9-1. The only loss we had was a top 5 game. We lost a close game. And so we're playing great. I mean, we're top 10 in the country. And our starting point guard, captain, best player, possible player of the year in the country, breaks his leg.
Oh, man, injury.
And, not only was he a great player, he's one of the best human beings I've ever coached.
What was his name?
His name was Eric Erdman. So he had already been a 2-time All-American for us, 3-time All-Conference player, was probably the favorite at that point to be the National Player of the Year, just outstanding point guard. And, I sat in the doctor's office with him and his parents when the doctor said, unfortunately, this is a career-ending injury.
Wow.
And, my heart dropped for him. But at the same time, I'm always thinking, okay, what do we need to do for our team now? Because this is devastating. And all of our players looked up to him. They all loved him. And I got some great advice from a coaching friend. And he said, hey, you have to be okay being vulnerable with your team right now, because this is going to be tough. And sitting in that locker room talking to the team about, Eric's done. What do we do? Number one, we're here to love and support Eric.
Yeah.
This is really hard for him. He's given everything to this program for 3.5 years.
Sure.
And, so making sure I was available for Eric individually, but also still trying to do what's best for our team, that was really, really hard. That was a tough season. in a really weird way, it was a really fun season. You know, we still won, I think, 23 games. We went to the Elite Eight for the second year in a row. Our guys really stepped up. But that was the first time as a head coach I had to deal with like serious issues within the team.
Yeah.
And nothing bad. You know, injuries are always bad, but it's not like somebody got kicked off the team or anything like that. It was an injury. And so working through that.
This is your key player, right?
Yeah. And so working through that and being able to still have success as a team. I think I learned a lot from that. And I think that just reiterated to me, you have to be yourself. You have to be real. I mean, that conversation with our team that day was incredibly emotional.
Yeah,
for
I'm sure.
almost everybody involved in that locker room. And, you know, sometimes as a coach, and you can't tell this on the camera, Randy, I'm a big dude. I'm 6'8" and about 250 pounds.
Okay.
You know, and so the players seeing me get really emotional going through that, you know, I think that made it real for everybody.
Yeah.
And so that's the first one. But the second one was actually the very next season. So we graduated a couple of really good players. Had a really nice team coming back. We started the year 7-0, ranked in the country.
Man, you're always starting 7-0, 9-1. Man, I got to get that secret sauce.
it's well, have good players, man. That's the best advice I can give anybody. But you know, and then we had a tough rest of the season. You know, we started 7-0, and then at Christmas we were 8-6.
Wow.
And you know, that's a tough stretch. And ended up had a rough January. Then the end of January, we knocked off the number 1, number 12, and like number 8 team in the country in an 8-day span. And so I'm like, we got it back.
Yeah.
And then we kind of stumbled again and ended up in a situation on the last day of the regular season. We needed to win and we needed help to make the conference tournament. And we won. We didn't get the help we needed, unfortunately. So we did not make the conference tournament. And I mean, first time in a long time at Briar Cliff. And I took that really hard. But what I learned from that was I spent a lot of that year trying to coach some of our best players, starters. Like I had coached Eric Erdman and Jay Wolf the 2 years prior.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the right approach. And that it's a regret I have. I don't think I coached that team very well. But I think that really showed me moving forward, every player is different. Every team is different. And what worked for a year or 2 or 3 or 4 years, there's no guarantee it's going to work the next year. You have to do a better job as a coach. Know your team, know your players. What buttons to push is going to be different every year. And so we went from that. 2 years later, we won a conference championship with a lot of the same guys that were on that team that didn't make the conference tournament. And so that was really rewarding to come out of that with the same group of guys for the most part and have a lot of success together.
Man, that perspective you shared there with those 2 stories only comes from experience. And it's why young athletes need mentors who've actually lived through adversity, not just talked about it. And when you've spent years building players and people, you start seeing patterns in what separates athletes who grow from those and who stay stuck. And I think you made a key point in terms of, you know, each athlete, each year is different. Coach, you've coached and mentored so many young athletes throughout your career. If you could give the next generation one standard, one mindset, or one daily habit that would truly make them built different, what would it be?
Love to compete.
Man, I love that. Before you expand on that, I'm a big fan of Pete Carroll, and he always talks about compete in everything you do, being the best brother, being the best dad, being the best friend, right? Compete, not just in the sport, but compete in everything you do. Explain a little bit about that, Coach.
Well, you know, again, I got to go way back. I've loved competition since I can remember. And you know, like my younger brother has said to me, playing games with you growing up was miserable because number one, I was a sore loser as a kid. And I think I've gotten over that a little bit. But my wife always has lovingly said in the past, you have a competitive problem. And, and I do, but I tell our players, life is a competition. And, you know, when it comes to basketball, I want to compete every single day. Every single day, if you're a starter, you're competing to remain a starter. If you're a rotation player off the bench, you're competing to become a starter and take somebody else's spot. If you're a guy who's not playing, you sit on the bench during games, you should be competing every day to take somebody else's spot, to improve your personal situation. And I think when it comes back to collectiveness to me, but as collectively, as a team, if we're competing at that level every single day, I think good things are going to happen. And, there's a vulnerability to that mindset, because if you compete every single day, you can lose. Everybody wants to talk about the good side of competition is winning. That's fun. Everybody loves to win. Everybody loves to start, all that stuff, but you can lose. And there's vulnerability to that. And I think there are players that shy away from competition at times because they don't want to lose. They don't want to look at it as a defeat. And I think if you have that daily habit where you're going to compete every day, and you get into a game and you're going to compete every single possession to win that possession, I just believe good things are going to happen. So my advice to anybody is love to compete.
Yeah, I love that. Love to compete. We're going to put that on a t-shirt, sell it worldwide together.
I love it.
Oh man. Coach Mark, last question I have for you is, man, we covered a lot of gems, a lot of tips, strategies, just experiences, and I think will definitely help our listeners. So my last question to you is kind of an open-ended question. Is there anything else you want to share with our audience members, our listeners? It could be something related to something we already covered. It could be something new. It could be related to your personal life. It could be related to your program. Anything else you want to share? Kind of open mic for you.
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind, and part of this relates to culture. It relates to accountability. A lot of the things we've already talked about. But I think something that maybe gets lost is, basketball is a very team sport. And in my opinion, it is the ultimate team sport.
Yeah.
And that's no knock on any other sport, but I'm biased.
Yeah, sure. I agree.
Being a great teammate is so valuable. And, I mentioned the guy I worked for 6 years, Nick Nelson. He used to say to our players, you got to get over yourself. It's not about you. It's about the team. And I think that is incredible advice for basketball. It's incredible advice for life in a lot of ways. Because I just got done saying, I tell our players, life's a competition, but in most aspects of life, whether it's your marriage, your work, you are part of a team.
Yeah.
And if you can be a great teammate, I think that can take you very far in life. And it's something that, I spoke briefly about my basketball career as a player. I wasn't all that good. I was
even
fortunate.
At 6'8", huh? Even at 6'8".
I was fortunate to play on an incredible high school team. We were absolutely loaded. And I played on some really solid college teams, but I was never the star. I was never the best player. And, for me, it was about how can I make our team better? Whether that's on the court playing, which of course I wanted to do more, whether that was in practice, whether that was being somebody a teammate could talk to. It's just something that's very personal to me, because it's something I took so much pride in. And some of my favorite players I've ever coached, were guys that didn't play a lot, but they made our team better in some way or the other because they were such a good teammate. They were so all in on our program, on our culture. And like I said, I think that is a valuable life skill, no matter what you do, what line of work you go into when you're done playing basketball at Briar Cliff. If you're a great teammate, I think good things are going to happen for you.
Man, that's powerful. I love that. Coach Mark, I appreciate you for sharing your time, your leadership, and your perspective with us today. This conversation was real, and this is exactly what Built Different looks like. Family, that was a powerful one. Coach Mark didn't just talk about basketball today. He talked about leadership, accountability, and building relationships strong enough to sustain success when adversity shows up. He reminded us that culture isn't built during championship moments. It's built in daily habits, daily standards, daily conversations, and building those relationships. And after 20 years of coaching college basketball, what stands out most is this: the strongest leaders coach with both discipline and care and love, right? So if you're an athlete listening, understand this. Talent might open the door, but habits, accountability, and relationships determine how far you go. If you're a parent, remember this: the development happens best in environments where standards and support exist together. And if you're a coach, this episode is the reminder that leadership starts with connection before correction. Today's episode with Coach Mark was a masterclass in leadership, culture, and accountability. The biggest takeaway, winning programs aren't built accidentally. They're built intentionally. Coach Mark talked about compete every day, the ultimate team sport. Be the best teammate, right? Family, if this episode impacted you, share it with a teammate, parent, coach, or someone who needs this message. Coach Mark, appreciate you again for the wisdom, the authenticity, and the work you continue to do for young athletes. Thank you so much.
Well, Coach Randy, it was a pleasure to be on the podcast. I'm so grateful you guys reached out, and I hope somebody somewhere can take something from this and use it, whether that's a player, coach, parent, whoever. I hope somebody can take something from this.
For sure. Thanks again, Coach Mark.
Absolutely.
And this is where Athletic Connect comes in. Through tools and services like the Victory Compass, Power Hour, Mindset Mirror, Goal Sync, Fight On Mentality, Built Different Mindset, and the College Pathway Intelligence, athletes and families get more than inspiration. They get a real framework for growth, a framework that helps them gain clarity, develop elite habits, strengthen their mindset, and make smarter moves for the future. If today's episode resonated with you, don't just listen and move on, apply it. Watch and listen to the Built Different Studio Podcast on all major podcast and video platforms, including Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And if you believe your story, your leadership, or your journey can impact the next generation, visit www.athletic.connect.com. That's with an IQ, and fill out the application to be on the show. This is bigger than content. This is about building champions in school, sport, and life. Handle today with intention. That's how champions are built. Fight on. Remember this, family. Talent might open the door, but your mindset, your habits, and your discipline decide how far you go. So keep showing up, keep building, and keep choosing the harder road, because that's the one that makes you built different. I'm Coach Randy, and this is the Built Different Studio Podcast.